How we talk to ourselves matters. I think our own internal dialogue feels kind of intangible and that it's just a part of who we are, and that it doesn't really matter as much as what books you read or kind of what productivity system you use or whatever else. But I think the way we phrase our thoughts has a pretty big impact both on what we do and on how we feel. If you're new here, my name is Jarle, and on Early Owl, we learn how to talk to ourselves. One unhelpful way I think we kind of phrase things to ourselves is saying, I have to do something. I like this saying about how you shouldn't talk to yourself in a way that you wouldn't talk to a friend. And I think that is mostly about kind of negative self-talk and how you shouldn't beat yourself up over things. But I also think it applies to have to, where you normally wouldn't tell a friend what they have to do. There's a couple of problems with using the phrase I have to. First of all, it's just not true. Like, there's nothing that you have to do in a vacuum. You have to do something to reach some presumably desired outcome. Like, you don't have to stick to your diet. You have to stick to your diet to lose weight. And in that case, I think you're better served focusing on the thing that you want to do, which is to lose weight. The other problem is that it kind of takes away your agency in the matter and makes it seem like you would prefer to not do whatever the thing is. But if you look a bit deeper, you will see that generally that is not the case. And I think thinking that way makes it harder both to actually follow through on the thing and to learn to enjoy it. I get to and I want to are both phrases which I think are more helpful and more accurate when it comes to doing things that are a bit more challenging. I get to, I think, is particularly useful when it comes to working towards some specific goal you have in mind. We've all been in situations where you want to maybe get in shape or you want to work out or whatever, but then when you have the opportunity and you're kind of fresh of mind and body and you have you have the time and you have everything set up, then you don't really execute as much as you could have. But then a little bit down the line, maybe just as you feel like you're kind of starting to hit your stride doing the thing, like you've just built a good workout routine or you've just started taking language learning classes or whatever else, then something happens in your life that just completely upsets your plans. Maybe you get injured and you can no longer work out like you want to, or maybe something happens with a family member or your job or whatever, which stresses you out, so it makes harder to work on other projects. And when that happens, you kind of look back at your past self and you're just kind of kicking yourself for not doing more when it was easier. And that kind of highlights why I like to use the phrase I get to in the present, because I know if right now I'm in a situation where there's relatively few obstacles in the way of whatever I'm working towards, then I'm in a lucky situation right now and I should make the most of it because I get to make the most of it. Inevitably, something will happen in the future where whatever I'm working towards right now becomes a lot harder. And then I'll be regretting not making more of the kind of easier periods, because I do know that life kind of ebbs and flows and you have bad times and good times for working on these kind of projects. So if you're in a period where things are relatively going smoothly, then you should make the most of it, because if not, you're going to regret it when life gets in the way. I also think this phrasing leaves a bit more wiggle room to being forgiving to yourself if you're actually going through a difficult period. Saying you have to do something is kind of black and white, and it's like you have to do this and there's no other options and it doesn't matter what else is going on in your life. But saying you get to do something kind of highlights when you actually get to do it. And if you're in a situation where you feel like you don't get to do it, then that's not necessarily the end of the world. The important part here is making the most out of the times where you have the bandwidth to work towards whatever goals you have in mind. Using I want to does apply in a lot of the same situations as I get to. Like, I don't have to hand in the paper, but I want to complete the degree. And I think it's useful to focus more on what you want to get out of this. But I think using I want to as a framing is particularly useful when it comes to avoiding bad behavior in the moment, especially if it's physically addictive in nature. If you have some unhealthy craving, you might be thinking like, oh, I want to have a cigarette or I want to have McDonald's, but I have to take care of my health. But I think this kind of identifies you with thinking that you actually want to do these unhealthy things, which generally is not the case. Phrasing it in a way like I want to do this thing kind of pulls along your entire identity with it. It makes it seem like you're just one entity that's aligned with this bad decision. But in reality, that's not the case, and probably more of you than not does not want to do the unhealthy thing. Just to give some examples of the yous that kind of split apart here. The only you that really wants to do the thing is the you in the moment that has some specific craving, and you feel like just fulfilling it would be good in whatever way, like it would feel good or it would taste good. And let's leave aside the fact that this almost never lives up to expectations, so the you who wants it is also going to get disappointed. But then you have the you who is probably going to feel like guilty or whatever else about making this bad decision. They don't want it. Another you is the person who needs to deal with the costs, like the cost to your health or the cost to your wallet. They probably don't want it. And then you have another you that is probably trying to quit this behavior that is addictive and bad for you, and they definitely don't want it, because indulging in this right now is going to serve both as like a physiological and a psychological reset, because quitting an addiction is much easier on day 10 or day 20 or whatever it is than if you just did this thing yesterday. I do think we underestimate the importance of things like how we phrase things in our thoughts or other psychological factors when it comes to something like an addiction. Like, you kind of just think that your cravings are your cravings and they just happen, and you're just like a fig leaf blowing in the wind, and they take you wherever they want you. And the only tool you have in your toolbox is kind of like gritting your teeth and getting through them. But I do think kind of how we think about things and the environment we put ourselves in has a pretty big impact on how much these cravings come and how easy it is to get through them. If you liked this video, I will put a link to a playlist containing other mindset type videos here. Then you get to watch them if you want to. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next Wednesday.